Hello. Hey, welcome to History Chats this afternoon. Yeah, we can get started in just a minute or two here. Just making sure everything is coming out okay. Yeah, good. I think should be good. Yeah, so today we're continuing our month-long discussion here about some more people you should know. This time talking about Ted Mayer, and we'll get into that in a bit. Just going to bring everything up just in case. Don't always get questions or comments or whatever. Always feel free if you have any. But I'm just going to bring up the stream just in case anybody has anything. I'll be able to catch that before we end the stream. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about an interesting topic here as we have this month getting to the end here. But yeah, I guess while we're sitting waiting here for a minute or two, I mean, you want to skip ahead 2 minutes or so. That'll take you if you're watching after the fact. If you're live, just kind of hang out for a second here. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know if you haven't seen it already, our next History Speaks is up as an event. We're going to start letting people know about it. This is one that I'm going to be putting it together, actually. This is a program that I'll be presenting as part of the History Speaks lecture series. And with Wausau turning 150 years old this year, or at least the city charter, right? I thought it would be appropriate to talk about the history of Wausau. So that's what we're going to do. This is coming up in just a few weeks, actually, on July 16th. This will be in person, and I'll probably record it and put it up shortly thereafter if you're not in the area and you can't make it. But it'll be a good program, I think. And so looking forward to getting that all together and to share it with you. Yeah. Just make sure one more time here, just in case I missed anything. Okay. I think I'm just going to jump in. I'm starting a little early. Let me make sure that oh, yeah, that'd be helpful. Hi there. Okay. So today we're talking about Ted Mayer. So for these programs that we do, people you should know. We kind of try to find a person that's going to be a nice mix of someone who is going to have an interesting story that we can talk about and something we have some visual stuff to go with it. It's not just, hey, this guy's important, but we don't really know much about them, that sort of thing. This definitely falls into the category, though. I kind of just want to talk about Ted Mayer. So in our collection, we have a bunch of other stuff, but this is a scrapbook that was donated from his family. This is the main starting page here, and it's really interesting because it collects his stuff. It's a scrapbook, right, of his art that he did. Ideas, sketches. Some of them became advertisements. I think some of them did not. I kind of just wanted to share them. And then from there, we got to, let's talk about Ted. Before we get to Ted and his art, though, we should talk about the context of how does he come into being, what is his background. So this goes back to Charles Mayer. Charles B. Mayer was his father. This is him a little bit later in 1900. But he was born in Pittsburgh in 1863. And then he ends up moving to Wausau with his family by 1878. Apparently, by this point, he's already working for a local company, and he ends up, finding a job here pretty quickly as a teenager, working for Mueller and Quant, who I believe are sort of, I don't think they're just shoe dealers, but they are one of the first companies that are kind of focusing on selling shoes. It's kind of an interesting period because in the 1860s and 70s, certainly people here needed shoes, they needed boots, they needed stuff to put on their feet, but there really wasn't that, a retail shop specializing in shoes specifically is something that's going to be kind of hard to do. But in the 1880s, you have the railroads connected, so you can get, a connection to the wider world, and you can bring in that sort of thing. And also, there's a population. The population of the city is growing, and so there is the demand for potentially a specialized shoe shop. So he works for them for a while, and then in 1890 he goes into business with his brother-in-law Alfred Richard to create the Mayer Richard Shoe Company. So he has his own shoe shop now. Now I believe his brother-in-law Alfred is more for financing as opposed to actively running the company. I can't really see him in the records living in Wausau. And by 1895, the company's doing well enough that Mayer buys out Alfred and becomes the Mayer Shoe Company. Now this is going to grow here again from 1900. This is the interior of the shop. Kind of interesting to see shoes stacked like that today. It's a little different layout than shops that you might be used to seeing. Kind of cool to see. So he gets his sons involved by 1913, Ted, Theodore, and Charles Jr. They join the company. And actually, after a brief time for World War I, Ted goes off and serves in the Army Signal Corps. I think Charles does as well, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure exactly. Ted was a little older, so maybe that worked out differently. But anyway, after that's over, in 1919, they reincorporate and actually incorporate for the first time as the C.B. Mayer Shoe Company, and they include the sons in the running of the company as officers. And they're going to do pretty good business throughout the 20s. By the end of the 20s, they are going to kind of invest in renovating the old First National Bank building, which is on 3rd Street. Here, let me bring up here's Google Maps here. So here's the 400 block, right? So Grand Theater, all that. Back in the distance, here's where the mall was. So Landmark or Hotel Wausau. Interestingly, this is the Lots Mayer building. That was actually, there was a big fire here, and the building that was there was gutted, and the Mayers invested in a new building as a business venture. And so, but their shoe store wasn't there. It was actually on the 300 block. But they moved then into this building on the corner, which is now the NWA building here. Originally, the First National Bank, and now it becomes Mayer Shoes. So that's kind of an important thing. So here you can see, again, that building. This is a little bit later. It's not a great picture. Apologize for that, but you can get the idea. Later sign here that are that's flat against the building. Here's an example. It's on the left here of that iconic era in which the signs went off into the sidewalk. But again, I think in the 70s, they passed a city ordinance that said that maybe we shouldn't have stuff that's hanging over pedestrians and into the city. And so they had to change that. But yeah, that's the building. It's a great, it's a 3-story building. Basement, they have an elevator service, which is kind of novel. 7 different departments when they opened in 1930. Yeah, lots of stuff. The other thing that happens here, though, is earlier, before that even happens, in 1913, Charles Mayer Sr., the founder of the company, passes away. And so the company then is left in the hands of his sons, Charles Jr. and Ted, or Theodore George Mayer. Ted becomes the president. Charles handles the books. He's the secretary-treasurer, or the bookkeeper. Their mother stays on as vice president for a number of years to kind of give some help with that. And yeah, so that's the company that they're working for, the family business. Let's talk about Ted for specifically, where did he come from? So, Ted was born in Wausau in 1890, the same year as the start of the shoe company here. His father starts. He is going to graduate from Wausau High School in 1908, and then he's going to go on to school for about 2 years in the University of Notre Dame, and then he will go to the Chicago Academy or School of Fine Arts. They use a bunch of different words there, but by 1913 he's got a degree. He's an experienced graphic designer and fine artist, and he is going to come work for his father, and eventually, as you've seen, be brought into the company as one of the people running it. But he brings his artistic sensibilities with him, and he really innovates a lot of things. This is the first time, and I could be wrong about this, but I think this is the first time that I've seen a proper advertisement for Mayer's shoes in the Daily Herald or local paper, right? This is 1917, so it's kind of late. And I think this is absolutely the influence of Ted in taking over some of the ownership of the company. Like they appear in the paper earlier than this, but this is a proper ad, right? And you know, there's a shoe drawn, so you know what we're doing. And he's going to continue to provide a lot of the advertisements, from what I can tell. You know, personally hand drawing, and I think laying out a lot of the stuff. There's some really artistic ads. This is one of the more ones that struck my attention because of just the amount of space it takes up. You know, newspapers at this period in the 1910s into the early 20s, like the way that you sold your business is you told people about it. Like the way that you do this is, you know, maybe you have a nice graphic to catch someone's attention, but then you have lots of text. You explain, you know, what you do and how you're going to save money and how good quality, and you try to lay out a persuasive argument. And this kind of goes in contrary to that. You know, there's a lot of white space. And I think that is something that, you know, most folks, owners of shoe companies probably wouldn't, you know, go in for. And yet here they are. So it's kind of cool. So they also, in addition to the advertising, and we'll talk more about the advertising in a second, but some of you may remember the days when you had a X-ray machine at the shoe shop. So you can see this is an advertisement. They get one in 1921. I'm not sure what kind of model they have, but you can see in the top left here. It has so the woman here is standing in. They mainly use this for kids. It seems to be the helpful thing because, you know, if you're a parent trying to buy shoes for your child, the child may not really be able to articulate what it feels like and whether the shoes are going to be too small or too large. And so the idea is, well, you have them sit there, and the way it worked is you turn it on, and the process would go, and you could see in real time the foot wiggling, so you could see your bones move. And so the child could sit there. You can see that the viewer that she's holding on to is quite a bit. It's not really up at eye level, and that's so that kids could see themselves. And then there were two other spots for the mother. In this case, the assumption mother would buy the shoes. Which, yeah, that's kind of how that worked. And then the salesman could also look, and then he actually had like a pointer. You can, you know, he could kind of navigate that and show like, okay, see the feet are too crunched up here. It's definitely a novelty, right? This is not something that, as it turns out, there's a couple problems with this, partially because, you know, you can kind of see, like, to the point where your actual bones are being scrunched up is probably way further than you're, you know, logistically going to need to know. Because a lot of what a foot has is the soft tissue that doesn't appear on an X-ray. So if your toes are, you know, uncomfortable, this is not going to give you a more exact fit than just normal methods. It's also obviously problematic because there's radiation involved. X-ray machines put off a little bit of radiation, and that's not great for, you know, customers who are doing this. Maybe just once in a while, you know, just getting a little dose of radiation isn't going to kill you. It's not going to cause adverse health effects, but certainly for the salesman, it's not great. So I don't know. So first of all, I should say that I don't know if Mayer is the only one. They are the first in Wausau to get an X-ray machine for shoe fitting purposes. They may not be the only one. I think they probably had it longer than we see advertisements. They stopped like pushing it as a convenience and something like a selling point by the 40s. And certainly by the 50s, it became clear, like people recognized, yeah, there's problems with this, but X-ray machines continue to be used in many places long after that. But yeah, like I said, it was a novelty. It was kind of an interesting thing, and you can kind of see that in some of the advertisements going back to what he's doing. I should also say he also like part of the idea is I think that Ted, and probably to an extent, the new generation, his brother as well, they saw that part of modern advertising is, having a brand, but also getting people in the door. And so they would have things where they would have acts and have the kids come and see the I'm blanking on what actually they would have, but in 1922, the following year after this, he installs a radio in the shoe shop so that people could come in and hear concerts from Detroit, or stuff that's happening in Chicago. Like you could, at a time before everybody had a radio, come into the shoe shop to hear the radio. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff, right? But advertising is interesting too. The ads at the time, he goes out of his way to sketch out ideas, and I think this is where I really wanted to talk about. The reason that I chose Ted to be a great topic for this is that these ads from the 20s, and this whole book here from 1920 to 1930 is mostly what's in here. There's a little bit after that. I think it's really interesting because you can see this is a trained artist, but it's you can see on the left, right, this first one, that's a very artistic sort of not quite abstract, but the techniques you're using is probably not everyday sort of usage. It's very much of the 20s and early 30s, a lot of this work, but at the same time, it is also kind of an everyman kind of idea. Like these are newspaper cartoon style. If you go on the internet and you search for, graphic art or art in the 1920s, the Art Deco style, like they're going to give you really extravagant stuff. And this is kind of down to earth a little bit, in an interesting way, but also very much of its time as well. And I think between these, I think you get an interesting idea. So in this scrapbook, there's a lot of sketches. He did a bunch of almost like things that you'd have at the top of a stationery, like a header for stationery or something like that, but also for advertisements. So this is a kind of in-depth one that he created, and this is a large scale. It would be shrunk down. And here he is kind of laying out a potential ad. I don't know if this ad ever got used in a newspaper or if they had flyers or whatever. Again, some of the stuff is him kind of putting ideas out there and kind of collecting them. But some of the stuff did get published, and you can see that kind of being worked out here. Like he had clearly, drawn something that he wasn't happy with, so he cut out, and he did these on like boards, kind of speak. Hold on here. Should have got this ready earlier, but you can see that it's just like a bit of cardboard, and it's it's thick, and he would use the ink drawing on that, and then, as you can see here, he just kind of overlaid it. It's kind of cool there. But again, to the style, there's this sort of very 1920s kind of, Art Deco stuff. He definitely drew a lot of shoes. I didn't scan too many of those. I made like 46 scans of that book. A lot of them are shoes, which makes sense, right? And so these are pretty artistically done. A lot of his stuff is kind of simplified down so that you're looking at a shoe. But at the same time, a lot of his stuff has this sort of intricate nature, that very 1920s into the 30s sort of way of graphic design. Not something that you'd see on a regular basis necessarily if you're just reading the paper, but he tries to bring that to it too. Also kind of interesting, so this is from 1920, they did a mail catalog. Right, so you can fill out the order form, send in some money, and they would send you some shoes. I think it's really interesting how he lays this out. He has a foreword with this text. Like, it doesn't need to be this fancy text. It doesn't need to have this, header up here of a winter scene. I mean, how many Sears and Roebuck calendars have you seen, or the catalogs from J.C. Penney's, or whatever catalog you get, that have a forward? This feels more like it's a program, or some sort of. Part of this is they're still kind of figuring out the format and how a local company would do this, but and then you do flip it through, and he's got the his style of drawing some shoes, but also just laying this out. Here's the prices. It's nice and simple, and it gets the job done in an interesting way. And probably this all has the effect of giving the shoe company a bit of a boost. People enjoy this. He also did some stuff in these years, again from the book, and other things that he's done for other companies and other groups in the area. Again in the 1920s. So this is Ritter and Deutsch. They have a new carpet and drapery shop, and so he does a whole pamphlet for them. But again, it's not like it's a. I mean, this is very much of the late 20s, that sort of style. He's got the purple and green. Yeah, just really interesting to see this. Again, this could have been a nice sort of just catalog. It could have been a bifold or something very simple, but he put a lot of effort and time into making this look cool. Similarly, he did a bunch of stuff for the arts community around here. John Winiger had a touring company, so he did this booklet. He also did a lot of programs for the Grand Theater, well, the Grand Opera House, which then became the Grand Theater in 1926, 27. But again, like, this doesn't need to be this extravagant. This is not something you throw together in an hour or two. This takes a lot of time and effort and artistry. And so it's really cool, kind of cool to see somebody do that. And it very much of the style of the times. So he's also getting involved in other things. So this is jumping ahead a little bit to 1934. This is Ted on the far left in the back there. He is involved not just in running his own company, not just in providing programs for the Opera House, but he is a member of the Wisconsin Shoe Retailers Association. He's a president for a couple years and is very involved in sort of statewide organizations, national organizations, and also local. So this is the committees of the Chamber of Commerce. They decide, this is in the 30s, they start doing this thing where they have Wausau Days as a kind of way to get people into Wausau, and he designs a bunch of art. Again, I don't know what this was all used for, and you can kind of see the duality here of something very fancy and also something kind of very down to earth, a newspaper cartoon type thing. The idea being that, hey, we want to get people to come to Wausau and buy stuff from us. So we're just going to have a coordinated sale citywide. And so all the companies would get in on this, and that would, get all the people that are maybe on the fence about traveling to town to do shopping. Well, this is a time to do it so that, you can get the good deals. So I think that in 1934, it was a 3-day event, and they revive it later in the 30s as well. But again, just kind of cool to see the art that he produced for it. It doesn't need to be this extravagant, but he put the effort in, which is cool. Winter Frolics is another thing. I did a whole program on this, was it last year? It feels like it was a little bit longer ago. But this is a winter sports festival that was held here. Again, a kind of way to get in tourism and promoting local winter sports. But Ted provided a lot of the art for this. This was this thing that I was showing before. Yeah, just kind of providing a little bit of art to kind of, I don't know if this was used to what extent it was, but this definitely was. This is the second year, and you can see this as a poster for the event. And so now we see him in color, showing off what we're going to see. You've got ice skating, figure skating, speed skating. You've got hockey, curling, and ski jumping. Yeah, so down in the bottom right, you can see his signature. He provided a lot of the art, and this art becomes, even after he steps away from making new stuff, it continues to be an important part of this. Particularly the ski jumping clown is kind of the representation for this whole event, and it gets used year after year. They drop it by the mid-30s in favor of something more simple, as the Great Depression causes a little bit of austerity, I guess. But yeah. And it's worth noting, this goes beyond. I don't know if Ted he ever got credit for it. he was had passed by this point, but when they revived the Winter Frolics in the late '70s, here's the clown. So iconic in a way that speaks to that era again, like we see with a lot of his stuff. Now, beyond the 1930s, I don't have as much of a collection of his stuff, but there's some interesting things that he was involved in. He was a avid photographer, sort of novice photographer, um, amateur is what I meant to say, amateur photographer. Is a hobby of his. Apparently, he was experimenting with some techniques called light painting, where you can kind of see on this picture here, there's like a pen flashlight that he would, add to, but the exposure to, I don't really understand what it was, but apparently it could have, kind of a surreal effect. It's complicated, but basically he's experimenting with it and he's recognized. This article talks about a little feature that was published in Popular Photographer, a national leading magazine for photography, about his techniques. And he continues to paint as well and do other things too. This is 1959. The Historical Society actually, in those days, we did art exhibits, partially because we didn't really have a lot of actual exhibits. Collections were a little scarce, and so sometimes we just needed to fill the space. But also, we got to be relevant and have new stuff coming in. And this is before the art museum gets created. And so, yeah, Ed Schoenberger comes to town and says, "Hey, let's have some art." And so here we go. I wish I had better pictures of this. I thought we might still someplace. I couldn't find it in time. We have slides and stuff going back to these years. But this is, at least gives sort of an idea of what he was up to. Again, I'm sure that he continued to grow as an artist and to try new things. I think this is kind of, at least from my non-trained art eye, I guess. I don't have, studied it or anything, but this feels very much of like an artist from the teens and 20s and 30s kind of growing for the next 20 years. There's elements that kind of make it kind of that era. I probably am not qualified to speak on that, so I'll move on. But anyway, recognition here from a local level too. Now, as I said, Charles and Ted take over the company. I believe Ted, until the end of his life, he dies in 1972, and I'm not sure exactly when he steps down or if he doesn't, and he just does it until his death. I kind of focused on the early years, but after his passing, his son takes over, Richard Mayer. By this point, he has been, in 1982, the chairman of the Board of Supervisors for Marathon County, and an alderman here representing the 5th District. So local politics as well as running the day-to-day of the shoe shop as president. Charles continues to be, doing the books until 1982. They decide it's time to close the downtown location, and so Mayer's closes its doors. Charles actually passes away in 1984, around the time that they're looking at. Richard apparently was contacted by some friends and said, "Hey, we should, this new mall thing that we have here in Wausau, we should get in on that." They were looking for stores to go in there, and they said, "Okay, well, let's start up Mayor Shoes again." Again, I think we probably have better pictures of the building itself. This is during some event or something, but you can see the shoe shop back there. And they were in the mall from 1984 until 1989, just shy of a century, the 100-year anniversary of the founding of the shoe shop by Richard's grandfather. But unfortunately, by this point, apparently the funding, the people that actually controlled the finances kind of decided to pull out, and so the company closed. So, yeah. There you go. There's a little bit about Ted Mayer's art and his career, the Mayer Shoe Shop. I know I covered a lot and also felt like I left a lot out there, but hopefully you learned some stuff, and now you know a little bit more about Ted Mayer, Theodore George Mayer, and his art and shoe stuff. Whew, stick the landing on that one, didn't I? Yeah. I'm going to check to see if there's any questions or anything. Nope, doesn't look like it. That's all right. We're going to continue this theme of, we have one more week here in the month. So next week, we're going to go back to continue this. Now, okay, so we were going to have a special guest. unfortunately, we were unable to make that happen. The idea was we wanted to get somebody involved in the DC Everest Oral History Project, which has been going on, went on for many, many years, and is a great program. And unfortunately, the people that were involved, that they were interested, but they just, for scheduling reasons and health concerns and things like that, they decided to decline. So in lieu of that, Gary and I will be coming back next week, and we will be talking a little bit about that program. And instead of a guest, we're just gonna, talk about oral history and the many classes of students that went through the DC Everest School District that got a chance to do so. So that'd be a great, I should be a good program as well. So, yeah, I think we'll probably call it there. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of the art here, and forgive my amateurish art critic. I don't know. This is just me kind of wanting to share some stuff, some observations that I've seen, having looked at the sources and everything. I think pretty cool. So now you know Ted Mayer, and I think I'll probably call it here. So have a wonderful afternoon. We'll see you next week for another person, or in this case, a program you should know. And yeah. Till then,